Beardo Benjo.
Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel, hosted by me, one of the many generic, bold, beardy VR content creators. I'm back after taking a month off of making these new VR game roundup videos. October was a little bit dry. There wasn't enough last month to really warrant making an entire video about it, but November is looking much tastier. There are a ton of great looking VR games dropping this month, plus a few speculative things that I think might be happening. Pure speculation, but I'm pretty confident about a couple of them. And there's also 4 VR games, which I cannot confirm to you what they are, which are currently scheduled to release this month, but they could slip. As always, I'm just giving you the heads up that there's a few extra games, other than the ones I'm talking about in this video, which could drop with little to no notice this month. So save a few pennies in your wallet or your purse, you know, just make sure there's a couple of quid left over, just in case one of these games drops and takes your fancy. Alright, let's not waste any more time, let's get stuck straight into the list. These are the very best looking VR games launching this November. Don't forget to slap a like on the video and leave a comment down below, because every little helps and I really appreciate it. Let's check them out. Kicking things off on the 3rd of November is Iron Man VR. The game was previously exclusive to PSVR, but Meta recently acquired the developer, Camouflage, and with that acquisition, Iron Man is now making his way onto the Quest 2. Now, I never played the game on PSVR. It launched at a time where I had already packed away all the cables, and no matter how much I wanted to fly around blasting baddies with my repulsor gloves, I couldn't bring myself to set it all back up for one game. However, we'll all be able to wear the suit and feel like a superhero soon, and the game will no doubt benefit from a wireless form factor and far superior controllers on the Quest 2. I'll have some gameplay and impressions for this one live on the 3rd of November. Do you remember Lemmings? Not the actual creatures, I'm sure they're still kicking about somewhere. No, I'm talking about the 1991 video game called Lemmings that spawned a series of follow-up entries in the 90s. Well, Cartofel, a game launching on the 3rd of November, is basically Lemmings in VR. A puzzle game where you need to keep all your creatures, I assume they're called Cartofels, alive by giving them instructions and changing the terrain to stop them from just aimlessly walking off the edge of a cliff to their untimely demise. It looks cute. It looks colourful, and if it nails the core gameplay mechanics that made Lemmings so popular, I'm sure it will be a great VR puzzler. Also releasing on the 3rd of November is Desperate Vladivostok, a game that describes itself as a VR bullet hell, but from all the trailers and gameplay I've seen, it looks much more akin to a Time Crisis VR style experience, an arcade shooter with fixed location combat and a striking Borderlands-esque art style. Now, I could be wrong about that, I won't know for sure until I go hands-on with the game myself, but the gameplay in this trailer doesn't scream bullet hell to me, and looks to have more in common with Crisis Brigade than Enter the Gungeon or Ikaruga. Either way, the art style looks great, and I'm never opposed to some mindless arcade shooting. This one is the final release for November the 3rd. On the 10th of November, get ready to betray all your closest friends and lie straight to their big stupid virtual faces. Among Us VR is nearly upon us, and the closer it gets, the more I realise just how fun this is potentially going to be. The original game's popularity exploded a little over a year back now, so it might feel like the VR version is arriving a little bit late to this party, but the simple concept of deception and deduction translates beautifully into a gameplay loop that will surely only be further enhanced by the hand tracking, immersion, and full body awareness that VR provides. I, for one, will be frantically pointing fingers at everyone whilst claiming I did nothing wrong, even though it's very likely I just murdered half the crew. I cannot wait. This next game doesn't have an officially announced date just yet, but it is expected to release sometime in November. I've also been playing this one a lot in my spare time, and considering I'm not usually a fan of stealth games, I'm really enjoying myself. Espire II is a fantastic, futuristic espionage adventure stealth game that spans a highly replayable single-player campaign and then a separate multiplayer story as well. You are encouraged to play quietly and slowly, planning out your moves, interrogating guards using voice commands, hiding bodies in lockers, etc., but you can go all guns blazing if you don't mind missing out on better mission ratings and ultimately unlockable cheats and fun extras. Fans of Metal Gear Solid, Splinter Cell, and the stealth game genre in general should get a huge kick out of Espire II when it launches on Quest 2 at some point in November. On the 17th of November, Broken Edge launches onto the Quest platform with its unique pastel colour aesthetic and skill-based multiplayer sword fighting. Now at first glance, this might appear to be the kind of game where you can just waggle your controller vigorously to overthrow your opponent, but that could not be further from the truth. Broken Edge is a game that rewards technique and timing over brute force. There's a level of finesse here that's often left out of other VR sword fighting titles that opt to prioritise messy, frantic combat over these slower paced tactics. Launching for just $9.99, Broken Edge feels like the VR equivalent of fencing, and it will reward players who choose to learn and master its mechanics. It could also be a great way to settle a score or bet with a friend in a way that won't end in actual physical dismemberment. The more I see from Vale, whether that be gameplay, the incredible event they ran in Miami, or the enthusiasm from the dev team and people connected with the project, the more I realise how serious this game is about being a proper VR esport and a truly essential tactical VR shooter. Vale is launching into early access on the 17th of November and opening its doors to all players who want an immersive, realistic feeling shooter with a sharp, clean and unique art style. With servers filled with players, it will be interesting to see how the wider VR community reacts to Vale. On paper, it looks like it could be the Counter-Strike of VR, but the onboarding experience for all these new players will be crucial in the game's long-term success. I'm always fearful for multiplayer-only VR titles that exist solely on PC. It's a hard nut to crack, and ensuring there's an active player base that can support the game modes and structure for the months and years after launch is always a challenge when it comes to VR, considering it's still a relatively small subsection of the gaming community. However, if anyone can do this, it's the dedicated team at Vale. There are currently 4 mystery games scheduled to release this month, but I cannot speak about them. As always, release dates could change or slip based on many factors, but just as a heads up, prepare your wallets for a potential 4 additional VR releases across a wide variety of genres that might just drop this month with little to no notice. Okay, we are in full-blown speculation territory now. Using my own methods of deduction, I feel like the following 3 VR mods could launch at some point in November. First up, it feels almost certain at this point that Luke Ross is working on a VR mod for the most recent and brilliant Spider-Man game. In his most recent Patreon update, he all but confirmed he was working on this web-slinging adventure, and it's been a while now since he dropped a new mod. Stray and Ghost Runner were the last 2. Knowing his incredibly speedy work ethic, November could be the month that we all push our PCs to the absolute limit with this highly requested VR mod. I also have a feeling we'll be seeing at least one of the following 2 Dr. Beef VR mods this month as well. The team are currently working on Bendy and the Ink Machine VR, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast VR, Jedi Knight Jedi Academy VR, and Wrath Aeon of Ruin VR. However, the 2 former games on that list are being spoken about a little more frequently in Patreon posts, and it feels like the finish line could be in sight for Bendy and Jedi Outcast. Having played demos of both, I can confirm they are on par with the rest of Dr. Beef's ports in terms of quality and performance. The team are one of the absolute best when it comes to VR conversions, and they continue to create ports that feel incredibly close to native games. Fingers crossed we get a full release from them this month. And finally, a game that isn't coming out in November, but one that's launching so close to November that I had to include it. Plus, it's the sequel to one of the very best VR games available right now. On December 1st, we finally get our grubby little zombie-killing hands on Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution. It looks bigger, bloodier, and more action-packed than the first installment, with new weapons, new locations, new threats, and an element of verticality that wasn't present in the original game. Seriously, I hope the section where you're scaling the outside of the tower skyscraper is a playable moment and not just something built for the trailer. I imagine Saints and Sinners will be the last big VR release of 2022. We have a few more titles scheduled to drop this year that might just squeeze their way in, but I am prepared to play Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 right through the festive season and into the new year. The wait for this one has felt painful, but it's finally coming to an end. And that's everything for today's video. Let me know down in the comments below which game you're most excited to play this November. I want to say Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, but that's cheating because technically it's not out in November, it's December. So I'm gonna say Among Us VR. Among Us VR or Iron Man VR definitely have my attention peaked, and I'm most excited to jump in and play those. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, guys. As always, please do leave a like, leave a comment, and hit subscribe, and I'll see you very soon for another one. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.